I started following this guy, and it's actually a crazy story because is this going in the podcast?
Yes.
People will love this. It had a butler.
No, you did not have a butler.
I swear.
Yes.
Yeah,
No.
it was wild. The problem is people, to attain that, think they have to go hard every single day, and they end up wrecking themselves.
Yeah.
I did listen to music because friends listen to music, but like I still then was like I wanted to read a book.
You never bought an album?
Never.
What got you into CrossFit?
If Brandon really wanted to, could he make a semifinal right now, you think, Max? Go.
Yes.
When I got into high school, like I fell in love with politics.
I feel like every discussion ends up being like, oh, that's a political thing. I'm like,
Right.
what? How?
No, it's
what?
not.
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't have to be.
Everyone does it. Both sides do it, and it's really interesting because they're just trying to play on your emotions instead of actual on like, here's what I believe and here's how I will help you.
I want to see Trump at a soccer game.
And as soon as I caught the ball and planted that left leg, my foot got stuck in the ground. It snapped my leg in half, and my foot flipped backwards. It was she looks at me and says, I know I'm not that pretty right now, but I'm gonna look like Jennifer Aniston once I give you this. I'll never forget it, but it is a cool story.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're gonna do an interview on Brannen. Where should we start, Chris? Should we start with him as a CrossFitter or him as a small young boy growing up in the plains of Florida and tell his whole story?
How about we get a little taste of who he is real quick? Let's do a little fun, a quick hitter round of just things he's into.
Oh, I love it.
Number one, cruises.
Yeah, I like cruises.
Tell us about your recent cruise trip.
Yeah, you know,
It actually is amazing.
I talk about this, and I was just talking to someone else, and they're like, who goes on cruises? You know, it's kind of like a weird thing for maybe a young guy like me. But once we did one with the kids, it was fantastic. And when you get a good deal, we bought this during COVID. So like no one was going on cruises. They were shut down, and we got
This dude loves a cruise deal.
I love any deal. That's what you need to know about me. Like BOGOs at Publix. That's where we do our shopping.
Real quick, before you continue that story, how old are you and how many kids do you have?
34, 3 kids,
All right.
35 in 3 weeks.
Oh,
2
you're going to
weeks,
be a Masters
something like
athlete.
that. Yeah.
Masters games next year?
Masters
Go
games.
and compete and coach at the same time?
No chance that I'm competing, but I'll do the workouts with Kyle Ruth.
Yeah, just to beat him.
Yeah, no.
Back to your cruise story.
I was just going to say, it's a great vacation. Look, I'm a salesperson right now. I'll be your travel agent, even though I don't have a travel certification, if you have kids, because there's a lot to do. You go to different ports. So that's why we love it. I don't even know why we got into this
That
topic.
sounds like my nightmare, a cruise.
So hold on. I like cruises, actually. I've been on a couple, but every cruise I've been on, you're like, I've been on them with one other person and family. And the room is like, you guys maybe won't see the depth, but maybe like 5 feet over and 10 feet long with bunk beds.
Yeah, the
and
normal ones are tiny.
The toilets are like this big. Brannen got this deal. Just explain what you did.
So when we bought it during COVID, the cruise lines were all shut down because of obviously everything was going on, and they needed to sell rooms. They needed to make revenue. So they started selling 2, 3, 4 years out, which they never do. It's usually like, let's say 18 months. And they had the suite rooms anywhere from like $1,000 to $1,800, which normally now the room we just stayed in is going for like $40,000 for the week. So it was a no-brainer to get it.
A no-brainer. Hold on. I think I remember you at some point saying you're like a cruise line YouTube watcher too. You like follow all the cruise line.
When we went on it, I started following this guy, and it's actually a crazy story because is this going in the podcast?
Yes.
People will love this. It's a good American dream story. So this guy starts this. He loved going on cruises, and he was doing this in the early 2000s. And his first cruise, he had like a normal flip phone, and he was just taking pictures. It was the ones that originally had the cameras. He posted, so they're like all grainy and nasty. He posted it on a WordPress that he created just for his own memories. And somehow people started viewing it. I guess maybe even then there was some kind of search online. And he went on the blog page that he made one time, and there was like 10,000 views after a year or something. He's like, maybe I can make a business out of this because I'm going on cruises every year. So he started.
I love how excited you are telling this story.
He's
great.
more excited about this.
Listen. It's great. So he starts going on these cruises and posting more and more videos. He bought himself a camera. All of a sudden, he got 20,000 views, then 40,000 views. And then when YouTube became a thing, he made a YouTube channel out of it. Well, now this guy has quit his day job. He has like 1 million followers on YouTube and is making bank just going on cruises and taking photos and giving his reviews.
He's living your dream.
I love what I do too much, but it is a cool story.
Yeah. And his room, the reason I talked about the little tiny room is he got like for that low price, he got like a legitimate like king suite. With
it was 1,200 square feet. It had a butler. There was a hot tub on the balcony.
No, you did not have a butler.
I swear.
Yes,
Yeah.
I
It was wild. It was wild. I showed Max all the photos yesterday.
Yeah.
He's like, "How was your trip?" I was like, "Dude, I got to show these to you."
That's ridiculous.
So we'd get back to the room every afternoon, and there's a actual dining room table in this room. That's how big the room was. The entire table would be filled with like a plate of cookies, chocolate ice cream. There'd be 2 pizzas sitting there on the table. You know, anything that you could imagine. It was a lot of fun. So yeah, buy a cruise.
I gain a lot of weight on food trips trips like that where food like that is easily accessible.
So I wanted to try something on this one that I haven't done in the past, and I was going to see how much weight I could gain because
on purpose.
On purpose.
Oh,
so
okay.
for me, those that have listened to our podcast know, like, I mean, I have goals, right? But it's not like I want to make the CrossFit Games or whatever. It's more like I'll have a specific thing that I just want to work on for a couple of months. And this one was, let's see if I can gain as much weight and then lose as much weight as possible in a short period of time. I know that, don't do that if you have performance goals. But
so how much weight did you gain?
9.7 pounds.
In a week?
In a week,
okay.
7 days. And I'm going to see how fast I can get back down to, I'm going to do an in-body and see like in 6 weeks what I can get to.
I think that'll come off really quick. I think a lot of it is the quality of food and
For
butter
sure.
and salt goes
Inflammation,
down.
yeah,
you're just like
what was your
toughy.
key food that you were pounding?
So probably like 6 slices of pizza a day, a cheeseburger every day. I'm a meat guy, so it will drop off fast, but I was doing like 2 or 3 steaks every night.
No.
Yeah.
You're really
And
getting
sushi.
after it. And sushi?
I was throwing
Did you
down.
have sushi in your room?
Yeah, it was
no.
pretty nice.
I'm going to need to get on these cruise websites.
You can go with me next time.
All right, that was supposed to be a quick round about cruises. What else are you into? Ask them something else.
Why am I? You just asked the question.
I don't know. I don't want to talk anymore. Go for it.
What else are you into? You just asked that question.
Perfect. Thanks, Max. What kind of music did you like when you were like a teenager?
People are going to judge me. I didn't listen to a ton of music. I know, Chris, you've made fun of me for this. Like, even when I was in high school, I did listen to music because friends listen to music, but like I still then was like, I wanted to read a book, or if I was.
You never bought an album?
Never. Actually, no, I did. I bought Linkin
Hootie
Park's
and the Boat.
first.
Oh, okay.
Linkin Park's first CD when those came out.
What was it called?
Man, I don't know.
Oh.
I mean,
know
he
what
got
I'm talking
Linkin
about.
Park, right?
Yeah.
Huh?
He got Linkin Park, right?
Yeah, that's a bonus point.
That's half of it.
Yeah.
What was? I'm actually really curious. What was your like high school area and demographic like where you went to school? Like, I just can't imagine being in a place where like music wasn't pushed on by the other people on the football team or whatever. Like, music was such a big part.
Pushed on. Hey, man, you better listen to this shit now.
But like everywhere you went, you go in a car with people, they got music on. You go into the weight room and there's music on. Or I guess maybe that was there,
Yeah.
but just on your personal time, you didn't do
No,
music.
everyone still listened to music, and that's very popular. But I think for me, though, it was either like I was in the weight room or I was training for the sport that I was about to do, which mainly in high school was just football and weightlifting. In Florida, weightlifting is a sanctioned sport, which is actually pretty cool. I think more states
it's not
should do that.
snatch and clean and jerk, though.
No, it's bench press and clean and jerk, which is probably a little bit safer for a high schooler. I think that it would be cool if they did like a powerlifting, weightlifting mix where they did all of them. So like it'd be like maybe deadlift, back squat, bench, and then like a second day they did a clean and jerk and a snatch. That'd be pretty cool. I assume it's still clean and jerk and bench now. But my thing was just like, instead of listening to music, I'd rather read a book and learn, and I'm still that way.
What books were you reading back then?
A lot of history. Like I was a History Channel nerd too. I know
What
that's
would you,
back in the
we
day,
would have
you were a
never
history
been
nerd?
friends in high
Man,
school.
so here's the thing is like when I got into high school, like I fell in love with politics. And even to this day, you know, we talk about it all the time. Like I follow it. And it's not that I'm passionate about one side versus another. I'm passionate about the process of how we elect our government officials and how that works within the bureaucracy that now is the United States. And I was fascinated with it then. So like I just started reading one book after the next. And then obviously I went to college. My major was actually political science. Which I never used, never will use. But I think it was like that was really cool because I got to see the inner workings of kind of like I worked for somebody that helped different campaigns on both sides. So
You've worked for campaign. What is it called? Like a campaign manager?
Yeah, it's called Wagner and Co. And basically what they do is they work with campaigns, and they've worked with, again, both sides, mostly Republicans now, because now it's so divisive that they won't hire the same people. But back in the 90s and early 2000s, people would go because they were just the best managers.
They just had a good reputation for campaigns.
Exactly.
Kind of everything's a little split nowadays.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and everything gets pulled into a political discussion. I've had this, I'm like the opposite of you, where I like don't want to know anything about politics because it makes me frustrated.
Yeah.
But I feel like every discussion ends up being like, oh, that's a political thing. I'm like, what? How?
No, it's
what?
not. Yeah,
it's not. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the art of thinking is now considered politics, which is kind of upsetting. Like, instead of it just being like what's best for the country, it's like, well, you got to listen to my opinion and that's what's best. But yeah, it was really cool because we actually got to be in some of those calls with like high level organizations that were running campaigns at the time. When I graduated, that was during an election season, which was really neat to see.
For who?
It was Obama and Romney in 2012. And I actually helped with some of the stuff in 2010.
Was that his second term?
Obama's second term, but it was super cool because I got to see how both sides, like here's a perfect example of this for people that haven't been in that world, or like this is the start of like really genius marketing. This was before Google was like a real thing. So what they did is a lot of mail ads. And when they would mail these, they would look at the demographic. And for example, let's say it was Romney's campaign. They needed to touch base with like the 45-year-old white male. So they would track those people. And then in the ad, they would have Romney fishing with his dog next to him, because that at the time would attract to the 45-year-old white male. When they went into a suburb that they were looking for.
Does that really work? You pull that out and you're like, oh, this man's fishing.
I bet you there is some subconscious to that. Yeah. You just identify with the person. They're like, oh, that person does what I do.
Yeah. Well, so here's the other side. Let's say it's
so if they wanted to get you, it'd be someone not resting during a transition on a burpee.
Yeah. On a cruise while reading a history book. Brannen doing burpees with a history book in his hand on a cruise line.
Just to finish that thought, but they would also do the same thing where it'd be Atlanta suburb, like where we're at, Roswell, Alpharetta. They're trying to touch the soccer mom. And so the picture then would be him at a soccer game with his wife and kids. That touches, it's just like, everyone does it. Yeah. Both sides do it. And it's really interesting because they're just trying to play on your emotions instead of actual on like, here's what I believe and here's how I will help you.
I want to see Trump at a soccer game.
I actually have some questions about this. So I've heard there's a lot of people that are going back and like reading historical, like Kyle Ruth was just telling me that he goes back and was reading the history of like Teddy Roosevelt. And I think Rich Froning has like a thing where he's been going back and reading the books of the autobiographies of all past presidents. What is the debate structure of how we elect different now? I mean, I guess it automatically is different because we have television and projecting it out, but like, how did they used to do debates publicly? Like, was it structured back then? In the same way, like, hey, you talk, now you talk, or moderators.
Yeah, I mean, the original debates, like if you go back to like the Lincoln Douglas debates, they would talk for 15 or 20 minutes at a time. So there was structure, but it was just kind of like these elongated. People were probably a little bit more thoughtful or just used to listening to long form stuff because they'd only get a letter that was super long, as opposed to, us on TikTok or Instagram where it's like this really quick ad and then we move to the next thing, or Twitter or X, where you're just reading 240 characters. I think the difference now is that social media does well when people are arguing. And so whether it's their intent or not, Google and Facebook and all these other platforms, they want a little bit of that because it creates interactions on their sites, as opposed to everyone just being really excited about one candidate or the other.
What would the view count be if it was 20-minute long? Like, hey, me and you sitting here, it's like, all right, I got 20 minutes to talk about training theory, and then you can do 20 minutes, and then we react to each other's things. Like, people would tune out in half a second, I feel like.
I mean, even with this, where people, like, I know in our podcast, are passionate about training, I don't think most people want to hear that. But what's worse with our government officials is they couldn't talk for 20 minutes about policy. because they don't know the policy.
Oh,
At least not not
the
our
person
presidential
who's
candidates.
Yes.
Our 2 presidential candidates now couldn't talk for 20 minutes about policy
because their underlings would probably do it. Yeah. Anyways, politics. We've gone cruises, politics. You touched a little bit on high school sports.
Hybrid Theory.
Yeah. What was it?
Hybrid Theory.
What's
Linkin
Hybrid
Park's
Theory?
first album.
Oh, that's what it's called? You knew the name or you
Why
looked
didn't
it
you
up?
say something?
Well, I was quizzing you.
Man, I love that album. It was great.
What was your favorite song? Got called out.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's the one that plays in here all the time?
Ding, 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 ding.
Yes,
ding.
that one.
Yeah.
What is that?
Did you really get that?
Yeah.
I didn't get
Shut
that.
up when I'm talking to you.
Yes.
Oh, God.
What got you into CrossFit? I met you in the early days. And for those of you who don't know, I actually coached Brannen that wasn't your first season, or was it?
Yeah, second season.
Your second season. But I met you, and at the time you were running Apex, but I don't know how you got into it originally.
When you met though, were you TTT or were you still at OPEX?
No, we met, and I had already started TTT. It was like right when I started in 2013.
2013?
Yeah, 2013-ish. And then we went to regionals in the 24 season. And at the time, I think I coached like 5 other Southeast male competitors. Like it was just a different time. There weren't a lot of options for coaching, and I had already grown up down here. So that's all I really remember. I remember too, like there were a lot of wall balls and pistols, I feel like, in that regional.
2014, they had the Nasty Girls version 2, which had a ton of pistols, like 150 pistols.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what that was so long ago.
Yeah.
Although, it's so weird because it doesn't seem that long ago, but it is that long ago.
It's 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You were such a different human.
What got me into CrossFit? Well, I played football through kind of the younger years, and then I played in college. So I think that and this is a story of most people that get into sport, like they do something that's competitive, and then they get into the quote unquote real world. They have a job, and they're trying to find something that can still scratch that itch. And for me, scratching that itch at the time was just like randomly doing stuff. Like I ran a couple of 5Ks, I did a triathlon, and this was like just out of college. And my first job was actually a strength and conditioning coach at a small school down in South Florida. And one of the guys that was also a coach on the football team wanted to start a sports performance facility. And so we just started randomly doing fun, like kind of functional fitness workouts together, which led to us doing some CrossFit workouts. And all those that were around at that time, like Chris, you've talked about this.
What year is this when we're talking?
2012. Miko was doing his stuff. We talked about that in a podcast recently. I remember doing some of his workouts because he would post them, and I'm like, man, that looks so fun. And obviously he would crush my times. And then Rich got a little bit more popular. Khalipa at the time was super popular. So I followed those guys. And this was before I was like really committed to doing CrossFit. I was just randomly doing training with a couple of buddies, and we would just pick those workouts and do them. Like Khalipa would always put out those grindy EMOMs, if you remember those. And it's like, let's see if I can finish this. And that led us to when we opened the sports performance facility, because we were really more focused on like field sports. My business partner at the time, he played in the NFL.
You had a big turf in that facility too, right?
Yeah.
It was like 100 foot of turfing, and there's sleds and all that stuff. I remember.
Right. Yeah. And we worked with the Lynn University lacrosse team, their soccer team. And that was kind of where most of the focus was. But to find a way to essentially add more revenue, and it was something I was passionate about, we started doing CrossFit classes. And that got me all bought in. You talk about reading the history books. I all of a sudden was reading the CrossFit books and trying to get a larger coast of education when it came to functional fitness, because like I knew the principles of strength and conditioning, but CrossFit was so foreign. And especially at that time, there just wasn't much information. I think really you with OPT were the only ones that were putting stuff out. And
it threw academic models on its head.
Yes.
It was like, oh, you only do strength training or you only do conditioning. The idea of doing cleans at 80% of your 1RM in a workout was like, well, why would you do that? You're going to not get conditioned and you're not going to not get strong.
Yeah.
Which now has kind of changed our thinking over time.
For sure. And so I was consuming as much of that information as possible, while at the same time almost falling more and more in love with doing it myself. And, just like any good drug addict, I was an addict of CrossFit, where like you do one workout after the next, and it just like that dopamine rush is really nice and a lot of fun.
Especially when you're winning.
Well, yeah, that too. I kept getting better. Yeah. When you start something, like I already had a really big conditioning base because I was doing a lot of the triathlons and 5Ks and all of that. and I was strong at the time. I'm so weak right now, but I just got done playing college football where all we did was the heavy lifts, and we did a lot of Olympic lifting. So I could snatch heavy, I could clean heavy, I could squat and deadlift and all that. So it almost naturally became pretty easy. The other thing too is in 2012 and 13, even the best guys weren't close to as good as the best guys now.
Yeah.
So it was more attainable to say, I want to make the games or I want to make regionals, as opposed to now, like everyone knows that's listening, to make a semifinal, you have to be just amazingly well-rounded and very, very strong, very, very fit. So when I realized that.
Pause that thought. If Brannen really wanted to, could he make a semifinal right now, you think, Max? Go.
Yes. I think that it would require, he would probably.
Jordan watched the kids all the time.
Yeah, well, I actually don't even think it would take that. I think just to make the semifinal would just require like a 12-week block of consistently doing all the CrossFit stuff, and then maybe a little bit of luck with the strength. Like if the strength was a ladder of stuff that ended at a moderate load versus being a 1RM. Like he's pretty far removed from just doing like 225-pound snatches under fatigue. I think that would be hard to snap in, but there are definitely semifinal level athletes that he could, in his current state, beat in a like 7 out of 10 type workouts, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean,
I know it's hard to like can't humble brag, or you're gonna get.
If it was
it's a lose question.
If it was just CrossFit, for sure, and I don't mean that in an egotistical way. Like I still am very, very fit when it comes to that stuff. If it's like the row burpees, wall ball and row, wall ball burpee box, like those quarterfinal workouts last year would have all been really good for me.
Yeah.
But if it is a 1RM clean and jerk, even now, like even if I train for 6 months, I'm just not going to be as strong as these guys because they're just so much stronger than I am.
You were big. I mean, I remember when you showed me the picture when we first started. You showed me the pictures of when you were in full football form, and you were big. But even when you were competing in CrossFit, you were bigger than you are now, right?
Yeah,
you were just thicker in the lower body. I
for
feel
sure. So when I played football, I was 212 to 215 pounds at 5'9". So I was very thick. And when I came in my freshman year, I was only like 195. But to play and to be competitive, I had to gain weight. Like I already was able to kind of move around, and it was just now blocking these bigger guys.
What position were you?
We ran a multiple spread, no huddle offense, which the reason I say that is I moved around a lot, but it was considered basically like an H-back, which sometimes you see them in the wing, sometimes they're in the backfield as the running back, sometimes they're in a slot. For those
kind of like an all-around player.
Yeah. But to do that well, you had to be big enough to block the defensive lineman, and I was just too small when I came in. Like those guys, we actually had he was played in the NFL for 7 or 8 years and was a starter. That was one of the defensive end. He was impossible to block.
What's his name?
Andy Studebaker. So like when you have a guy like that, it's just you're not going to be able to block those guys. And even some of the other guys that weren't as good, they're just 270 pounds at defensive end or a defensive tackle, and I was 190 pounds. So I gained all that weight with my cruise diet at the time. Wasn't going
the
on
gallon of milk. Lots
Yeah.
of steaks.
And then I kind of maintained that. I started doing those triathlons. I probably got down to like 195 to 200, and that's where I stayed when I was doing CrossFit. But it helped because, to your point, the strength stuff, it just made lifting a barbell or cycling a barbell easier than right now. I fluctuate between 185 and 190, 191.
Yeah. What was he saying before you cut him off?
You were talking about how it was more attainable back in the day to make a.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, there were people back then, I feel like there were very few people that had long training histories. Now, the people that are going to semifinals, I mean, almost all of them have 6 or 7 plus years of just doing CrossFit on top of probably some other sport training that they were doing leading right into it. So it's just like that immediate world-class ability dream is no longer there. It's like you get into it and it's like, yeah, you could be really good at this, but it's going to require 2 or 3 years of consistent work to like close the gap on all the details, all the gymnastics, all the fitness things, all the strength things.
Yeah, I mean, it's just because they've had 7 years of development in every single specialty area. Whereas, no one was that good at gymnastics. No one was that good at strength. No one was that good at conditioning. Or if they were bad at the other things. So there just wasn't the well-rounded athlete, maybe other than like a Rich at the time. And even he had to work on that. But he walked
when he won one of the games while walking the 333.
Yes, I remember
that. Would never happen now.
No.
Right? And like I know he developed that fitness over time, but that just shows like where everything was. There was like really strong people that got crushed in the endurance, really small people that were good at gymnastics. Now you have everybody that's like, hey, you're good at literally everything. You're strong, you're fast, you're enduring, you're good at gymnastics. And those skills just take so long to cultivate.
Yeah. And I think it shows a proof of concept for CrossFit. Like they're not necessarily doing Metcons every day, but the concept of doing conditioning layered with strength, layered with skill work is a really good way to train if you just want full body performance. And there are still people that, you know, like in the strength and conditioning world that say that that's not possible. But now these guys truly are, or girls are back squatting these crazy numbers and running a 5-minute mile. We saw that at the games, which is just incredible to see.
Yeah. And a lot more people too are getting into, like, I've seen weightlifters who have transitioned into CrossFit, and they're like more open to the idea of being like, oh, well, it's cool to, on one hand, it's cool to snatch 1.5 times your body weight, but if you can't like run a casual 5K, is that really worth it? And they start having those more like, oh, fitness really is important type things. Like right after you're done with your like sport, right? Like when you're no longer a weightlifter or a football player. I think that's where fitness is like, it becomes a real compelling thing to want to cultivate in your life.
I agree. That's always been my argument is, you know, people make fun of it in like the weightlifting world or the powerlifting world or bodybuilding. But it's like you're the one that's specializing. You're specializing in one thing, and so you're actually the least healthy of all of these examples. Obviously, they're CrossFitters.
The least fit.
Yeah. I think, you know, when I say healthy, I mean just having the ability to do a bunch of things well. Maybe that's a bad example, but I think that's what's cool about CrossFit is if you do it the right way, then you can be strong, moderately fast, moderately enduring, moderately skilled, and having all of those as opposed to it just being, to your point, a 1.5 body weight snatch or clean or something like that. It's like, okay, you can do one thing well, but these guys and girls can do all these things well.
I have now that spawned a question, a curiosity. It's more, this is less about you personally, more about your philosophies, but how is that different to you than just strength and conditioning the way we understood it before CrossFit, right? Like, I'm guessing you were doing iron or triathlon. So it's like you're working on endurance. You wanted to be stronger. You were probably doing push-ups, sit-ups, squats, and very remedial gymnastics. Maybe you weren't doing handstand walks and whatever, but was it different? Or is it the combination of doing it with the intensity and the scoring you think that makes it different?
Yeah, I think that's the big difference is that you may still be doing a lot of the different like specialties. Like I still, was doing strength work and a lot of endurance. I biased it towards endurance when I was doing triathlon work, but I wasn't doing the strength work with the intent to get stronger. It was just maintenance. Whereas CrossFitters, it's like I'm always trying to drive my one arm snatch and clean, or if I'm not driving them up, it's because I'm already at the elite level.
And you're maintaining them.
Exactly. And then I'm always trying to get better at handstand walking and handstand push-ups and rope climbs and whatever else. You name the skill that I'm working on. And the same thing's true with conditioning. Like there's never really an end point there. People are always trying to get better. So I think it's just the continual pursuit of excellence. Virtuosity is the word that we use in the CrossFit space that makes it, at least that's what I admire about it. And I admire about the people that are doing it. The problem, and we talk about this on our podcast all the time, I think, is people to attain that think they have to go hard every single day and they end up wrecking themselves.
Yeah, it's like extremism.
Right.
Or they try to do it too quick or don't have a long time scale. Or,
exactly.
Yeah. All right. What got you out of competing? Did we compete?
No, hold on. Oh, we were talking about how y'all met at some point a long time ago. You were at the regional.
Oh, yeah. No, we met before the regional.
Yeah.
Dave Hochberg is the one that introduced. This is my introduction to him. He was like, hey, I know you're coaching some elite guys. You got to talk to this guy, Brannen. He's like, I've seen him do like power clean 315 and like he's got an engine and he suffers like nobody I've ever seen. And like, I've heard that back then there were so many people that were like, oh, I could be the games champ because again, it was attainable quickly. So I heard that like over and over and over again all the time. You got to meet this guy. You got to meet this girl. This is the best person I ever seen. This is our local gym hero. And that's the only thing I remember of the introduction. And then we met and we started going over his numbers and initial testing. And I was like, holy shit, this guy is really, really, really fit. You had some structural issues with your knees, which maybe you should, maybe you should explain how you came into contact me or what that conversation with Dave was like, and also tell the story about your knee because it's relevant to like your athletic career and why you stopped. I feel like.
So Dave, he owned CrossFit Delray Beach, which I had a performance facility that was just south of there in Boca Raton. It's basically like they're 10 minutes apart, right? It's two little cities that are combined as you go up Interstate 95. And he came into the gym after they sold it, and he was looking for a new place to train. I met him. Dave, he's actually been on the podcast. He's been on the podcast. He's like one of the most likable, nice guys, funny, just like he walks into a room and, you're kind of attracted to him. And so we had a conversation. We did a couple workouts together. He actually judged me on a workout one time. And that's after he judged me on this like qualifier I was doing. He's like, you got to meet Max. And so that's how we got in touch. I think he probably reached out to you, and then we got on a call.
We had pizza at some place in Delray Beach.
Yeah. Oh, man, what's that place called?
So good. Skull of
Cruise Line Pizza.
No, this is like top notch. I actually need to go there again. Yeah.
Wait, was that a dig on the cruise pizza?
Cruise pizza's not great, but this pizza is
top notch. It was top notch. It was really good pizza.
What makes top notch pizza?
I like a true wood fire oven, a little char on the bottom, but still soft and flexible. Not too much cheese. Some really high quality sauce, can't come out of a can. And that's what they make there.
Dude, my algorithm is messed up. You know the guy Dave Portnoy who does the pizza reviews?
Yeah.
I click on those all the time. So like if I go through my search filter, I'm like pizza.
Oh man, I'll trade you.
Oh yeah, I don't want to trade with yours. Yours is all 9/11 stuff.
Dude, you open my YouTube right now, it's going to be 30 different 9/11 videos.
Oh man,
I can't stop watching them. You were saying?
I don't remember.
One bite, everyone knows the rules.
Y'all went to pizza?
Yeah, we went to pizza. Man, Dave used to take me to this place called Cut 432.
Oh, that was another, yes.
Yeah, great steakhouse. Yeah. Anyhow, Dave's kind of the main connection, and he's still close friends with both of us. He's an awesome guy, and I'm glad that we met because it led to being at Training Think Tank. And
what was your first impression of Max? There at the pizza place.
Man, he's got a bald head.
It's a big bald round head.
It's a big man.
Yeah. My memory's so hazy, but I remember going into Apex. I was doing some muscle up drills. I watched you train. I was really deep in gymnastics bodies training at that point.
The first thing I remember is you were doing ring TikToks.
Yeah. And back lever prep and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe you had some kind of bet with someone.
Yeah, I did, and I lost.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. I remember thinking, man, he's doing a lot of work on the rings because you were on them for maybe 30 or 40 minutes just practicing different positions, skin the cats and all of that. But yeah, I mean, that I do remember you coming in and doing that, and we had good conversations. And I think for me, I was more nervous because I was thinking about competing is trying to impress you with what I was doing. Like any athlete, that's what they're thinking about first. And had no thought of it leading to us working together and being a part of Training Think Tank.
But at that time, were you hoping he'd be your coach?
Yeah. That was the initial conversation. It was like, okay, I need you to coach me. And
I wasn't really building TTT at that point. I mean, Kyle was working. I think Kyle had just started working, and I was kind of in discussions with Adam, but it was like, I had a full-time job and I was just trying to figure things out at that point. It wasn't like I had no business plan at that point.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the conversation was I need to figure out how to move around the issues that I had with the left leg and in particular the knee and the ankle. So in college, it was my junior year, and this was actually like probably the best shape I've ever been in. I was the strongest. I was the fastest, just based on like a 40-yard dash and like a 5-10-5 drill, which are things that are tested in football. Most explosive I'd ever been. I felt really confident.
But in the end, it didn't really matter.
Yeah. It was the week before our first game. And the way that you do it, or at least most teams do it in football, is the week before, you'll run what's called a script. It's basically plays that are already scripted out for you where the starters will go out in a full speed scrimmage, but it's very short. It's almost like the stinger concept that we have in CrossFit where you do one really hard workout, but it's really short, intense, not a lot of mechanical stress, and then you rest a day and do your competition. Same thing here, but it's just a week out so that you actually have time to fully recover. So we had 6 plays. They were all full speed with the ones on defense, and they're going full speed at us. So we're tackling everything. And the third play of that was a pass to me in the flat, which is basically kind of like toward the numbers on a football field. And the quarterback rolls out. I'm running out there. He throws me the ball. I catch it, but the ball's like it for those that are watching, it's like on the back shoulder. So I turn and I'm grabbing the ball like this, but all of my weight is still leaning forward on my left leg. And as soon as I caught the ball and planted that left leg, a guy comes in and hits me below the knee in the leg, full speed. Ugh. And it was a turf field, and just the timing, like it was a millisecond either direction, it wouldn't have happened. My foot got stuck in the ground, it snapped my leg in half, and my foot flipped backwards. So it was the craziest.
So what was it, like a dislocation?
Dislocation of the ankle, and then 3 separate breaks along the tibia and the fibula because it was a spiral fracture of the fibula when the ankle dislocates, and then the tibia broke at the ankle joint, and then a little bit higher up. You probably can't see it on the cameras, but I got all kinds of stuff all over my leg.
I've never broke anything. Does that hurt in the moment, or is it adrenaline?
Man, so here's the crazy thing, because people have asked me that question many times when I've told that story. As soon as it happened, I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what. I just felt something. And I landed back on my back, and the running back who was in the game, I see him, and he grabs his helmet and turns the other way. And I'm like, something's wrong with me, because he was looking at me.
Yeah.
And then I go to pick my leg up, and when I pick my leg up, I don't see my foot. So my knee was up in the air like this, but my foot was gone because my leg was bent in half and my foot was backwards. And then I turn, I'm going to lose the mic, but I turn to the side like this so I can see it. And that's where I see my foot dangling. And that was when the pain started rushing in. And it wasn't physical pain yet. It was like the emotional.
It was like panic almost or something.
What has just happened? I thought it was a dream. Everything was just so surreal. And the athletic trainer runs out there, and thank goodness we had a great one. He said it immediately, which, by the way, you have to in that instance, because
so he turned your foot around?
Turned the foot around. And here's why, because there can be a ton of nerve damage. It happened to Alex Smith, who's an NFL quarterback. He almost lost his leg because he had a bacterial infection after it and all that. You can go look at that story. It's crazy.
It's crazy what that looked like, too.
Yes.
Side note.
Yeah, you can look up the pictures of it. He had almost the same injury, except his leg. It was just his ankle. It wasn't his leg. And he sets it. And then when he said it, that's when the physical pain came in, because obviously, like, it's all now rushing. The adrenaline's kind of starting to wear off all within like a minute. They put an air cast on me, and then the ambulance comes out in the field and all this. The ambulance is sitting there in the end zone the entire time. So like they get there, they inject me with morphine, and I'll never forget this. The nurse or the EMT person, she looks at me and says, I know I'm not that pretty right now, but I'm gonna look like Jennifer Aniston once I give you this. I'll never forget it. And she kept it very lighthearted, which I appreciate, because I was really freaking out.
Did she?
Yeah, it was crazy. You forget everything. Look the same, but you forget about everything. The morphine. It actually. This is another tangent, but man, I understand why people get addicted to opioids, because it was probably one of the best feelings, because it's the relief of pain. I was in so much pain.
Was it a drip?
Initially they shoot you up with so much, and then it stays on a drip in the IV bag in the ambulance.
I've had that.
Yeah,
look at his big, so you can't see it, but he
talk
just
about it. Isn't it crazy?
It was. I had a.
Are we selling drugs right now?
Called? What's the thing I got?
Kidney stone.
Kidney stone. Yeah. And I was avoiding going. I was all day, and I was just avoiding going to the hospital. And finally, Mia's Kyle Lube, he was like, "I'm taking you," and I was like, "Whatever, dude." And I was in complete agony, and then they give me a morphine drip, and I'm talking like as soon as it hit me, like they did it. And then instantly the happiest I've ever been in my life.
Yeah.
I was singing songs.
It really is. It's crazy, and it's scary, because at the time I'm not thinking this, but after the fact, I was thinking about how easy it would be to get addicted to those. And then obviously the opioid crisis that happened here in the United States, where they were just handing out, opioids over the counter for a while. And then the prescription was even easier to get, because it's just like, I'm in back pain, give them to me. But man, the next like 2 weeks after that were miserable.
Did they surgically repair it?
They did.
Yeah, right?
I went through 2 different surgeries. The first one was immediate, because of it can be nerve. There could be a bunch of nerve damage. So the first one was like, as soon as I got to the hospital, they took the x-rays. Here's another crazy story actually about this. For those that are get grossed out by this, you probably won't like it. The x-ray tech didn't read the script, what happened to me. He just saw me in an air cast. So I think he assumed that it may not be broken and he just needs to do the x-ray. So he's the one that takes the air cast off and he picks my leg up. My foot drops. That was probably the worst because the morphine was already kind of wearing off. And then he realized, and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, blah, 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 whatever.
Yeah. God, I would hate to be that guy. Yeah. That's like some shit I would do. My bad, brother.
I would have bumped into his leg, I feel like. You're like, oh, shit, I'm sorry.
That's what you get.
Yeah. I broke my fibula, just a clean break, small, nothing as catastrophic. But when mine broke, I didn't feel anything. Like I was wrestling. I went to take a shot. It was my high school instructor who was a Iowa starter heavyweight who was much older, and he stuffed my shot and was like, don't do that again, because he stuffed it and was telling me like it wasn't going to work on him. And like a minute later I tried again. He bucked me extra hard and I fell over top of my leg and I heard this big snap and it broke, but I didn't feel a thing. And I was like, I think I just broke my leg. And he was like, you couldn't have broke your leg if you're that calm. And I was like, okay. So I tried to stand up and I just fell, and I was like, no, it's definitely broken. But when I went to the hospital, then the adrenaline wore off and they set it inside the cast, and that hurt. I did not like how that felt at all. So I can't imagine what this would have been like.
Yeah.
I had no morphine though.
The morphine helps. So next time.
Yeah. They're going to be like, Max, you have a pimple.
Excuse me, can I see Jennifer Aniston, please?
It's just a pimple, Max. I'm like, give me morphine. I can't take it.
Oh man. Yeah. The next 2 weeks after that were probably the hardest that I've had in maybe my entire life, as far as just physical pain, because it's just every day you wake up, you're in pain. It takes a while, but then after that, once you start the recovery process, then it was just more emotional, not being able to be out there on the field and do the things that you want to do. All that to say, that was a long story to say that injury caused like upstream effects that I still deal with those. I got to be careful about how much mileage I put on my feet when running. I love to run. I'm still running so many miles a week, but I kind of have to listen to my body a little bit more. Squatting, I can't do too much squatting in a week. Bounding, double unders, jumping onto a box, all those things, just because I have pins in this ankle. It only moves so much, and I want to say that maybe it wasn't set correctly, where it feels a little
or like
funky.
Perfectly in line, probably.
Something that it causes some knee issues, and because of that, I needed your help. I wanted to be in the sport and try to figure out how to kind of like mitigate the pain or offset it with maybe other strengths. Like, okay, I'm not going to be a great squatter, but what can I do pulling or, maybe with a barbell? And so that was kind of the task that you had.
I mean, it was actually a really challenging, but also a high learning coaching project, because you couldn't really do high volume pistols, but you needed to get your pistols better. You could do them well, but you'd like always go up onto the toe on that side. Your snatch, you could hit big snatches, but your butt would always be like farther back and more of like a football based squat. And you didn't have that like straight up vertical squat that is really required for weightlifting. And we couldn't really put the training time into it. So I remember the creative project of giving mobility drills and figuring out how to layer in volume. But ultimately, I think it was the pain from that and us realizing like, hey, we're not going to like, your knee is so sore and tender right now, we're not going to follow these squat progressions. We'd rather keep you getting better at other things. And it developed a process of trying to figure out how do you compensate around things that are not going to change. Because like movement drills only go so far. Right. Like not rebuilding your leg with, proper knee mechanic drills or terminal knee extensions, but it was definitely a huge project. And I think ultimately that was why you decided to stop, right?
Yeah, at the time, for sure. I think after taking time off, I realized, okay, just not doing as much helps, because then I could get into squat pain free and do, I've done a lot of the open workouts, including those that have hundreds of thrusters or 120 thrusters in them, and had scores that were world class, top 20 in the world. But I just wouldn't post the scores. It was more for me to do it and see if I could do it. If I had to do that all the time, it'd probably flare back up. Yeah. But now the nice thing is that I could go out there and do anything that I want without the pain. And I learned from that whole process. So when people are coming back from an injury or they have an injury, it helps me communicate with them about how to stay calm and how to handle it. Because especially with all the type A personalities in CrossFit, I think everyone always thinks they have to do more. And sometimes it's just about doing less or putting more focus into the few things that you are doing as opposed to it just being going nonstop.
Or taking longer to get the same outcomes that you want. Like you sometimes, some of the progressions you just can't really rush if you want your body to adapt to it properly.
Yeah. And so as far as my coaching knowledge, I gained so much from going through that process. In the same way that if you're coaching someone that's going through that, you learn. You have to adapt your thought process as a coach from someone maybe that moves really well. You know, like if you work with a Noah who can squat in like 16 different squat variations
with his feet in a split.
Right. And then someone that can't squat at all or get to depth, then the way that you're coaching them is just completely different. But that's also another reason that I think CrossFit is so cool as a coach, because there are so many different ways that you have to do it, and you got to think about it differently for each level of athlete. And even at the same level, the style of athlete, the strengths and weaknesses that they have, the movement deficiencies or strengths that they have. So you're always evolving, and you're always having to upgrade your knowledge base.
So we did the regional in 2014. I remember,
and then I stopped in 15.
Did you do 15 again? Or did we do
Wadapalooza? We started the
year?
season, and then that's when I was like, I've got to take some time off because my knee was in a really bad spot then. But a lot of it was because I just kept pushing harder and harder than I needed to. So it's like I tell people all the time now, it's time to back off, but it's because I went through that. You know, I just was telling someone this today on a call, like sometimes you just have to pull back a little bit and focus on recovery. This is going into a different conversation, but like people think about CrossFit as I need to do more because there's so much volume required, but our bodies are machines, and yes, you need to upgrade that machine. That's kind of the training time, right? Like if I want to put new tires on my car to make it go a little bit faster and have better grip, okay, I'm upgrading the machine. Or I put a new air intake in it so that the air gets to the engine a little bit better. That's upgrading the machine. But just as much as doing all those things, you have to be able to recover. So you got to put the right kind of gasoline in the car, the right kind of oil, make sure that you're regularly changing the oil so that it works. If you just drove your car nonstop, eventually it's going to die. You either don't have the gas in it or your oil runs out. And so now it's just block on block in your engine. The same thing's true with our bodies of like, and I did this, so I know that I ran out of oil and gas. And me being I was like this in football. I was always type A. I'm going to be the first to the gym. I'm going to go as hard as I can. I'm always going to push that kind of like, I don't know, Jocko mindset. And that's not a bad thing. It's just I didn't know how to turn it off. Yeah, it's like it's a good thing until you need to turn it off.
Yeah. And I think it can be a very self-damaging thing that I think a lot of people don't realize. Like a lot of people undermine and ruin their hormones, and then they're like, oh, I'm getting older. That's why I'm having this hormone profile. So I'm going to take hormone replacement therapy. But really it's chronic behaviors of overreaching and doing recovery practices and not sleeping as much. And it's almost the mindset that leads to the physical deterioration that people are calling aging a lot of times.
Yeah.
Especially with high performance extreme athletes, which I would classify CrossFit as. CrossFit, Ironman, weightlifting, powerlifting, like you're pushing your performance thresholds to the limit. If you do that all the time, over and over and over again, without any regard for the softer side of things, you run the machine down.
For sure. Yeah. And every machine at some point is going to have a breaking point if you're not taking care of it. You know,
you're about to break.
Yes.
Was that the song?
Linkin Park.
Oh my God, it's full circle.
Call back.
Everything you say to me. 24. So hold on, you stopped 2015, but then you also came on board in 2015, right?
Yep.
Did you move up?
Yeah, the
here
same time I
2015?
came on was when I made the decision that I wanted to focus on coaching, get as many clients as I could, and like really try to dive deep.
Did you present that to him, or did you?
We talked about it. I don't remember. So Kyle and Adam were like almost full-time coaches, but they both had their gyms. You were not yet working for us, I don't think, but you had your gym. But I think like something was going on and you were ready to kind of sell it to your partner or something along those lines. And I was in Utah and I wanted to move here. And I remember I took on a big loan to be able to get us the equipment to set up that 2,500 feet of square footage that we had and get it rematted and get a new rig set up and move out here. And Kyle and Adam were moving down here. And I think either we set up something remote first to get to a certain level and then you moved. I can't remember the details. Can you?
Yeah, that's what it was. You basically sent out the job offer and it was kind of, you were still in the moving process. So it was, let's get started where I'm working in Florida, you're in Utah, and then once you moved to Atlanta, I moved at the same time.
Oh, okay. You came up. We did come together.
Yeah, it was
okay.
at the same
Where in
time.
Utah were you?
I was in Sandy, which is very close to Salt Lake City.
Can we move back?
Why?
He wants
like
the
it?
mountains.
I want to. Yeah.
I want the mountains too, but Utah was not my favorite place to live, just personally.
Yeah.
It had some, also too, like in the valley there. There's this very weird thing. So it's a valley, and the mountains are awesome. Like going outside and seeing like whatever
That's what I want.
14,000 foot big peak is actually for whatever reason it's like cool on, like it feels cool. But something about that valley and the air pressure, people will like heat up fires and the smoke stays and
heard.
covers the area, so you have like foggy smoke all winter. Like the air quality can be really bad, so people leave the valley and go up into the mountains. But when you're in your house, like it's just dirty, gross air. So there's like definitely other mountain places I'd choose than Utah. Not to hate on our Utah fans, but it's just not my place.
I'm listening.
It is beautiful.
Yeah.
It is very, very beautiful there,
Yeah.
though. One of my favorite places.
All right.
in
So y'all
Utah.
both moved here.
Yeah, so I did start taking on clients in Florida, and I was doing that all remotely, and then moved here. And actually, I think I was the first one here because Kyle and Adam were still in the process of selling their gyms.
Yeah.
But then shortly after I was here, Kyle moved, Adam and Becky moved, and that was kind of the start of it. And then like every year, we've added coaches and different people to the team.
Yeah, Chris came in like 2017, and Mike came and Brandy came to work for Travis around that same time. There was Ryan and Mia came on at the same time, Colleen and Habdo and Perrin. It just kind of like, it's been like one or two people every year, I feel like, or every other year.
Max, what are your thoughts, or like what stands out about Brannen as a coach? We got the training tank. And so what is his kind of...
Well, I think the things I've learned from Brannen, so he did with his football background and also just the way he thinks. Like Brannen is fast. He's a fast moving person. He listens to everything I send him on 2 times. I think
he speaks at 2 times.
He speaks fast.
1.5.
Yeah, but he also did speed and agility training for professional football players. So early days when we were training Travis for the games and stuff, Brannen created this huge database of sprint and agility work, hamstring specific work, rehab work for ankles and jumping and plyometrics, concepts for how to get people to move faster and think about transitions faster. And I think those were kind of the biggest things he added to the early quote unquote think tank. And then over time, I think his expertise it's broadened. And I think some of the big things that he's brought to me or brought to TTT as an organization is my expertise in coaching was very one-on-one driven. Like I started the business one-on-one. CrossFit was more like one to a group, right? Like you come to a class, but I never really vibed with that. I'm not good in classes in general. Like I'm so distractible. So if the content stream is slow, like my mind's off in space. It's hard for me to stay focused if I'm bored. So oftentimes I would find one-on-one instructors, and I like to be like intimate. Brannen helped. I started the online training program at some point, which was called Design with you. Mm-hmm. And I was modeling it off of how I did it in groups before, but Brannen took over that program and helped me shape
now
it.
TTT Compete.
Yeah, which is now TTT Compete, and help shape how do we think about you're building a program that potentially thousands of people are going to do. How do we segment it and help those people get what they need individually from this big macro structure? And I think Brannen, because he's so deep into the humans of that program and talking to them, I think he's added ability to take macro concepts that I would think about in coaching and apply them to something that's practical for people that are following kind of a well-rounded structure. And then I would say the last thing is he's just tough. I would say your empathy for people is not the greatest if they're like weak-minded about. I mean, you are nice about it to them, but I feel like you're just so good at suffering that I think mindsets like, I could get to the point where I'm just like, I don't want to push hard through. Not that I don't want to work hard. I just don't want to like be at 180 beats per minute. And like, it's very easy for me in that moment to be like, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to slow down.
I will correct what you said. I think Brannen does have empathy in those situations, but it's all goal dependent. So if your goal is to get to X, then he'll hold you to it. Whereas if you said you don't really care, then am I wrong there, Brannen?
Oh, like he would have empathy with me because I'm not saying I want to be a
but
games
if you're
athlete.
saying you want X, Y, Z, and then
yeah, I mean, I definitely have gotten better at that. That's my ultimate goal, is to still have empathy, but not let it be like toxic empathy, which I think is like a problem just in our culture at large, where everything is, instead of being right about something or speaking truth, we're just trying to be kind to people. And so the same thing, those principles matter in training too. Like if your goal is to make the games, I've got to be honest and truthful with you. I don't have to be kind.
Yeah.
But if your goal is just like, I'm in here and I want to stay healthy and fit, then maybe some kindness needs to be given, and probably goes a longer way for those people, because psychologically they don't want to be told that they're not good enough. They just want to be able to stay fit, and there are going to be days where you don't want to go hard. I fully understand that. It definitely was hard for me earlier on, because I've always been very goal driven and like always wanted to go hard myself. And so trying to remove that and put myself in someone else's shoes is just like a failure that I've had over and over again.
Or just hard because you're living a whole different lifestyle.
For sure.
Like. Yeah.
But you know what? Working with all of the people that we have in our online program and getting to know all these people and then putting faces to names when I meet them has allowed me to kind of be a little bit more empathetic and understand that everyone has these different, goals and experiences. And while the truth is still the truth, and sometimes you need to be hard on someone, based on their goals, there are different ways that you want to coach someone.
Yeah, and it opened up, like the earlier days of people hiring me personally were like people like you. Like I want to do whatever it takes to be great at it. Then this whole other realm of psychological profile, which I'm getting into now as I'm older, is I'm still very competitive and performance oriented, but my life's not defined by it, and I have other priorities that supersede it. So like push comes to shove, I come in, I have somebody come up to me and say, hey, I need an emergency meeting right now, and I also have a training session on my docket. I'm taking the meeting every time. If I was in athlete mode, I'd have to be like, hey, I got to draw my boundary and can't have this meeting. I'm going to do this thing over here. And then that approach needs to just be a little bit more nuanced. Well, it's not like, because then you're doing stress management and priorities, and the training is not like the most important thing.
Totally.
So were all those things that I said of you fair? Your contributions, were there anything you'd add? Like you're like, I taught you this, but you didn't remember.
I wanted to ask, like, when you did start getting involved with TTD Compete and you kind of took that on, like what big, has how you think about training changed much since then? Because how many years have we been doing it now?
I started 2018. I think I did 2 years, and then Brannen came on with Mike to just help, and then they kind of took more of the bigger picture reins 2 years ago now, 3 years ago.
It was 2020.
Yeah, was it 20? It was COVID.
It was pre-COVID. It was January of 2020.
All right, sorry, I got a messed up memory.
Well, I mean, the time has gone by so fast. Yeah. I think there are a few things. One, I used to be pretty dogmatic that I genuinely thought that the only way for real progress is probably going to be genuinely, and then I said probably.
Genuinely.
I'm giving all these caveats here. I thought that the only way for true progress would be one-on-one coaching, where you did a full assessment, you were helping them with kind of all their recovery concepts, and then writing a training program that fit that person. But doing this for now 6 years, because even before like 2018, kind of helping and seeing the progress, I think I've found that community and the psychological benefit of being with others and the accountability that you have in that community can be just as powerful as a good training program. And we write a good training program, but the thing that I love most about it is getting to meet those people, seeing their progress and seeing them still reach their goals in this larger community, as opposed to it just being someone that's isolated in the gym. Now, one-on-one, if you want to be a games athlete, I think there's still, like, especially when you need to peak for a competition, it's very important that you have someone that's helping you with that. But our community program has been so helpful for so many people, and you can make a ton of progress while also having fun with the community. So that's just been a blast for me. The way that I've thought about training has changed, has really been more centering on the averages within a data set. So like taking all of the numbers, and we do this, we're actually upgrading this, Kyle and I, with the use now of ChatGPT. This is going to be a lot of fun over the next couple of months, taking all the CrossFit data that we've saved over the last 12 years or whatever it is, and getting to really analyze that in a way that we can see the most common combinations, time domains, the speed per rep, all of that stuff. But the systems we have now, I still use to kind of get an idea of like, what are the most common limitations that athletes have in the sport of CrossFit? What are the biggest separators? Like what movements are going to give you the biggest bang for your buck if you're really good at those versus the least bang for your buck? And then we write our training program around that, because that means that we're taking care of kind of the majority of the people that are in the program. And then we decided, well, we still need to take care of these edges, right? Like, how do we do that? And that's when we came up with this concept of skill programs and with different paths.
And divisions and all that
stuff.
Yeah.
So then we added on multiple paths. So now maybe if you're already an elite athlete, you have an elite path. Or maybe if you're someone that's a beginner, now we have a beginner path. So it kind of takes care of those edges. Or there are a lot of people that are inside the bell curve, but are really bad at one movement. So then we started upgrading the program with all of these skill programs that have been really helpful, because one, now we have a skill program that we can use for one-on-one athletes too, but two, it allows those athletes in the program, they're doing the main program, and then they're just adding on ring muscle ups because they have to get better at that, or handstand push-ups or handstand walk. And so we started with a program that was really good, and the great thing about our team is we're always thinking about ways to upgrade it, and so now it's great, and now the next iteration is just going to be even better than that.
Yeah, so I think it becomes a little bit more like data, maybe to summarize what he says, it's almost like a little bit more data driven if you're trying to build a group program, because or different type of data. Like if I'm coaching Brannen and he says, this is my front squat, this is my snatch, I can very easily be like, hey, we got to prioritize this. When you have a group of, let's say 500 people and you get all of that information, it's hard to say like, well, we need to focus more on snatch, or we need to focus more on this. So you're kind of like making approximations based on all of the people in the program and all of that data to find one good, like, hey, this is going to be the meat and potatoes that everyone can follow. And then you're doing the dessert and the sides and all of that stuff on an individualized basis with communication, because it's just a whole different challenge. Like you're leveraging the strength of our community and social aspect of competing, but then you're trying to figure out like, okay, for each one of these individuals, what's the best way that we take them through this program? Or I don't know if that summarizes what you said any differently. But it's like a little bit of a different process, I feel like.
No, I think that's right. And for those that maybe don't have a coach or aren't in our program, this is still the same way that you can figure out how to get better for yourself. Get all your numbers and then compare them to the averages on the open leaderboard or the quarterfinals leaderboard, and compare them to all the movements that have been tested. And you can get an idea of like, what are the things that you need to work on. And we do this in all of our programs and when we're prepping people for different competitions. Like the perfect example is the Masters Games this year. We wrote peaks for, 20 athletes, however many we had. And what we did is we went back and pulled every single Legends workout that has ever been written and listened to probably, maybe 6 or 7 hours of podcasts with those guys to get an understanding of what their programming biases were. And then we wrote an all-inclusive program that covered all of those things. And at the end of it, I had people that were asking like, did you get leaked the workouts? Because they tested almost the exact version of 4 of the 10 workouts. And then there was only one movement we didn't touch more than once in the program. So
which one was that?
It was a single arm thruster. They did a ton of double arm thrusters, but
close enough.
A lot of that, it's easy because CrossFit's CrossFit, but having the exact time domains and doing things like the snatch ladder and the standard and the run deadlift, like we did all of those workouts without knowing the workouts, just because we saw the historical data that was out there.
It feels good when you get it right.
Yeah.
It feels so bad when you I remember in 2018 regionals.
Oh man, I think everyone got that wrong.
Like the move in the market was going so heavy weightlifting.
Yep.
Outlaw, whatever, for people that don't know, that 2018 is I guess 6 years ago now. The trend of what CrossFit was that Castro was building, like he came in the 2018 year and just like cut the legs off of it and was like, oh, you guys think barbells are important? Bam, we're having a regionals with no barbell. And it was all dumbbell work. And I didn't do
dumbbell and rings.
Yeah. And I so underprepared people for that. I mean, I guess everyone did. But it just was such a demoralizing feeling.
Do you think that was a Castro call? Or Rogue was like, hey man, do us a solid. People already got barbells.
No.
We need to move these dumbbells.
That's actually a good point.
Yeah, I guess it is true.
My understanding, I think Castro said Glassman requested more dumbbell work that year. And then he just was like, let's go all in. I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure I remember that on a podcast.
Oh,
someone fact check me on that.
Yeah, I don't know. And I don't know Castro that well. But my interpretation was that like he doesn't or didn't appreciate or like when people were arrogant or thinking that they could predict what would come out. And there were a lot of people out there talking about weightlifting and coming into the market as weightlifting experts in the CrossFit space because snatch and clean and jerk were these two big sexy things that were being tested every year and people didn't know how to do them. So I thought it was almost like a power play with the programming. Like, oh, you guys think you're experts? Well, now your expertise is completely irrelevant. Look at these tests.
You think we'll get a kettlebell?
You think we'll have a kettlebell year?
Kettlebell year?
Yeah, I don't think so. Kettlebells are, I don't think so. I don't think that'll happen.
To judge.
I don't think that'll happen ever again. I feel like the whole sport's evolved and like decentralized a little bit, and people are kind of getting to the point that they are like, we want to do these things. Like, we want to do these things with the barbell. We want to do these gymnastics things. And I think the allure of constant change is just dying a little bit. Maybe at like the big competitions, like doing one or two cool things that are like out of the realm. But I think for most people that compete, they want to know what they're doing. Like, people go to play pickleball and they know, like, I have a racket, I have a ball. These are the rules. Yeah. And I think people are craving that more now, that it would cause too much stress to go back to that, like, we're going to change everything mindset.
Yeah.
I mean, even that change was just to implement change. You're still doing snatches and clean and jerks.
Yeah. I guess it was a pretty big change.
No, it was a big change, but it's not like, how many of those are they going to keep doing?
Yeah, true.
You want to end with the rapid fire? I'll think of a question. You think of a question.
Okay, fine. You go first.
All right, Brandon, you have kids. How has being a dad changed your life? Quick, you have to make it quick. You can't go
rapid
deep.
fire. Yeah, you can't
rapid fire. I'm sorry. I just go deep on everything. They have broadened my range of emotions, much more robust. The highest highs are even higher than I ever imagined. The lowest lows are even lower than you ever imagined, because now you have things that you care for more than anything in the world.
Can I do follow up to your rapid fire? Oh, you're about to do it.
I was going to say, which one's your favorite and why is it Kinsley?
All three. All three of my kids are my favorite.
All right, Max, you're up.
If you could have one breakfast food, what would it be?
It would be a steak and eggs. That's
sorry. So you have two breakfast foods?
Why even muddy it with the eggs?
I love steak and eggs. Oh, it has to be over easy, and you put it on top of the steak and then cut into it. So good.
So the yolk.
What kind of steak for breakfast?
New York strip.
All right, you can either go on a very budget or economic friendly cruise, or you can go on another golf trip to Pinehurst.
Golf trip.
Oh, baby.
Golf
I'm
is still
telling
my
Jordan.
first love. Second love, Jordan. Second love. Love you.
Jordan, Pinehurst is better than the cruises with you.
Do they do golf cruises?
They do, actually.
No, they don't.
They do.
That should be
They go down to the
one.
Dominican, and there's like all those nice courses down there, and you can go like one to the next.
Max's face. Oh, my God. Hold that.
My God.
Awesome would that
We
be?
need to set this up for sure. Is it your rapid fire question?
Yeah. Who's your wife and what was she known for back in the day?
Jordan Dorman. She's a much better athlete than I am. People have asked me this before. She's like, hopefully our kids are athletic, but it'd only be from her. Played basketball in college, and one of my favorite memories, this was, we were just dating. We went to this Lifetime Fitness. You know, they have the gyms in there. We're sitting there just like shooting around, and these guys come in. And they're like, hey, you want to do a 3-point contest with us? Talking to me.
She played for Florida, right?
She played for the University of Florida, yeah. And she hates when I tell the story. But they only asked me. And I was like, nah, how about you let her play? And they're like, nah, we don't want a girl. Like, they were just like, it was like really weird and rude. And I was like, trust me, let her play. So they all go around. There's like 10 shots at this free throw line. There are 5 different spots, and you go around and then come back. Every guy goes, and it's like, 3 out of 10, 2 out of 10, 4 out of 10, whatever. And then she goes last and literally just drains every single one, 10 out of 10. And the guys, just their jaws dropped. It was so awesome.
She is exceptionally good at hand-eye coordination sports.
Unbelievable.
Like when we used to play, I talk so much shit, and I talk sexist shit. Like I'm a free-range shit talker when I play games. But I remember playing spike ball. Usually there is a explosiveness difference, and like usually the guys playing versus the girls playing, it was a different thing. But she had such fast reflexes and would like look one direction and make me move, and then just hit the ball softly in the others. And she used to like really piss me off mentally, where I was like, damn, she's like legit better than me. Like I can't do anything about this.
Her new thing is pickleball.
Yeah.
And so have you been playing?
I only played once. It was very fun.
You should see her play that.
I don't want to play her.
It's more impressive.
No, I don't want to
play. So impressive. My hands don't work the same as they used to. Like I never was as good as her, but like I'm just slower and she's the same speed as she's always been, which is really impressive.
You're getting slower,
Brandon? I am. I play pickleball with her and I can't keep up. It really is impressive.
You got to hit a couple more rapid fire, go.
If you could write one workout for yourself to try to beat everybody in our audience or everybody in the TTT community, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, it would just be rowing with some kind of body weight.
Would it be like the row burpee workout?
Row burpee, maybe a really light power snatch or a power snatch burpee. Those are all things.
Hold on, no, let's actually write the workout right here.
It would probably just be the one that we already released.
The 10 rounds of row burpee.
There aren't many people in the world that could beat that. Yeah.
What was the workout?
10 rounds for time of 15 cow row, 15 burpees.
Are people doing that in this? This is the cycle?
They already did.
Yeah. What was the best time in the retest? Do you remember?
I don't know. I think the fastest one that I've heard is 15:51, and I got 14:35. So there are guys that definitely could be close. Yeah. The difference is
not
that
many, though.
There aren't enough that can produce the power on the row and go fast in the burpees. There's guys that are really fast at burpees or guys that are really fast at rowing, but being able to combine those is like it almost takes kind of my body size to do that, where you're heavy enough to pull, but still not too heavy to do the burpees.
Not like a 220.
Like Travis doing the burpees, he weighs too much now to keep up with that, even though he could crush me on the row and vice versa.
Favorite history book that you've read?
I used to like Michael Blachos's all his stuff, but now he's gotten like super political. So I don't know which one would be my favorite, but he had some good stuff, good biographies.
That was so unsatisfying. Give me a book, dude. Come on.
I don't remember the names of them. Like he has.
Okay, it doesn't have to be a history book. What's a favorite book of Brannon's that people want to know Brannon? They go read this book.
Okay, Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters is a really good one that I've read recently.
Interesting. Is that like literal strength too? Or like it's more of like a psychological?
Yeah, more emotional, how to connect, but it also comes down to physical strength too.
Interesting. Yeah. I lost my question, but I thought it was a good one. You get to write your individual dream client. What would they be if they were a CrossFitter? So like, what are they trying to get stronger? Are they, is it personality type? Like what are the types of coaching relationships that you're like, oh, this is my niche?
Yeah. I have been just super biased the last couple of years with a lot of masters athletes. So I think it would probably be a masters athlete. I think they enjoy the sport more. They take it just as seriously, but they're also very pragmatic when it comes to, they have other life things that they have to do. And so they understand that sometimes they just have to cut it off. And I really appreciate that. So I think it'd be like a 50 to 55-year-old masters athlete that wants to be competitive, but is realistic about where they're at, that listens.
So like Joanne winning the game.
Joanne was,
I was just saying, you got one.
Yeah, Joanne was great. We have so many awesome people that either individual or are compete athletes. So many amazing compete athletes that they're fun to coach because they really care still, and that's fun. But they also, again, are realistic about where they're at.
You have another one?
I'm all out.
All right, my final question. Do you remember
all right, cut this off.
the first workout you did at TTT with yours truly?
Yeah.
Because I remember. I don't remember all of the other important stuff, but
hundreds of workouts.
Yeah.
We did a bench workout that Max dominated. But you bench like 500 pounds. So
at the time, it was a good workout. Me and Brandon raced 10 rounds for time, 250 ski, 10 bench press at 185. And he was way more fit than me. So I was ski erging slower and then going to the bench and doing them all unbroken. And I remember I had like little screws on the ground to mark my rounds. And we came down to the last round and you had to take a break. And I hit my bench as you were going down on literally your final rep. And I beat him in this workout by half a second. Probably the only workout I did ever beat him in or would ever beat him in. But
you'd still beat me in that, though.
I set traps for people all the time with that.
Didn't you beat Travis in that too?
I beat Travis though. I started with Travis earlier before he was super strong. So I feel like I beat him in other things too.
Yeah.
I feel like then by the time.
Right now though, you'd still beat me and Travis in that workout.
You think so?
I think so.
We should try that
just
out.
Because your bench press would still be unbroken and you say like
I don't know if it would though because I get tired faster. So the ski erg, like I'd have to really go slow on the ski erg.
But you can go 20 or 30 seconds slower than me on the ski erg. That's what you did.
Have to take a break.
You were like 20 or 30 seconds.
I think I was like a 205 and you were like a 150.
I want to say I was probably like almost around ahead at one point, like round 5, and then my bench just blew where I had to go like 5-5, and then eventually it was like 5-3-2. But those rest times were like 25 seconds between reps, and then you just slowly crept up, and then eventually you passed me.
So now that we ended on the most important question, satisfying my ego,
No, I got one more.
Just kidding.
Would you beat P. Diddy in a workout? That's all the time we had.
I got a question for Chris. Are you going to delete all that stuff we talked about earlier?
I don't know. I have to review it.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Why? Should I?
Probably.
Yes.
He was so uncomfortable.
Just staring at the wall over
I
here.
don't know. Maybe it's in there.
All right, everyone. So that is Brannen Dorman, start to finish. Now you know him more. So when we do our podcast and he's talking about transition times, you know more about him.